Late night TV ratings are crashing, and it all has to do with a comedy credibility crisis. Kimmel, Colbert, even Fallon heading out the door, perhaps. An industry analyst says that there's an expiration date for the late night TV genre, and it could be as short as 5 years. We'll tell you why and how we might be watching the extinction event of late night history.
Okay, the last time I had beer was at a baseball game with Doug.
Okay,
cheers.
There you go.
Hello, folks, and welcome back to the Pro Channel, where we, as ever, endeavor to explain entertainment, keep you ahead of the culture curve. It's what we do every single day. And folks, let me tell you, we are underway with another video of excellence right now. We want to welcome back Christian Toto, host of the Hollywood in Toto podcast and the website. Welcome back, sir.
Oh, thanks for having me back. I appreciate it.
It's a joy as always. And folks, if you enjoy this sort of content, consider clicking the like button, and we will get underway talking about late night TV and why it is in, I don't know, would we call this apocalyptically bad for late night? Well, we'll find out in the video conversation. Here we go. Tim Pool is where we'll start. And Tim Pool says, I just found out that Timcast in real life has double the ratings of Jimmy Kimmel in the key demo, and now I feel bad for ragging on the little guy. This is the new media versus the legacy media, but it didn't have to be this way. And so I want to go back to Mr. Toto's article, sir. And this is such a good one. This is from 4 weeks ago, and it really sets up where we are today. Folks, if you are not checking out Hollywood in Toto, you need to be in there. HollywoodinToto.com. That's the website. Check it out every day. You'll have a good time and feel better and understand entertainment in a way that your friends simply do not. Here's the article. Corporate media's corruption echoed by Colbert and company across TV landscape. It says President Joe Biden wasn't capable of discharging his duties as commander-in-chief for large swaths of his single-term presidency. New reporting from the Wall Street Journal shared some, but not all, of the shocking details. The rest will likely come from tell-all tomes to be published in the coming years. Except most clear-thinking Americans already knew about Biden's cognitive decline. And of course, you can see there Biden reading a teleprompter cue that says, repeat the line before repeating a quote. Now, you go on to describe late-night TV as having essentially tried to do a coordinated cover-up. So let's talk about that then. And folks, we do recommend it. The link to this article is down in the video description. Go check it out. But Christian, why do you think that late night TV was converted from the house that Johnny Carson built, which was then passed on, the baton was passed on very well to Letterman, to Leno, even Conan, although that was a kerfuffle, but it's turned into just partisanship. It's turned into hyper-partisan watching, and that means that it really only has a reach of maybe 1/3 of the American audience at best. Why was this decision made by the powers that be?
I think there's two things going on here. One is just a cultural shift where everything became political, where you couldn't have a sporting event without having a Black Lives Matter banner posted somewhere. So every part of the culture it seeped into it. So I think that late night was just part of that wave. But more specifically, it was the Trump versus Clinton slugfest in 2016. That's when I noticed specifically that the comedians, the late night hosts, basically stopped making fun of one party and doubled and tripled down on the other. And it really never changed since then. It's the old Leno way, the old Carson way, even the old Letterman way changed. You know, Letterman got more political in his later years for sure, but I don't think he was ever quite like a Kimmel or a Colbert or a Seth Meyers. He never went that far, but the old way just didn't work anymore. But it was that the 2016 was the real turning point. But I just think it was inevitable just how the cultural winds were blowing.
Well, now you say the old way didn't work anymore. The new way also doesn't seem to be working anymore. So what way is there left for a late night genre in which we can get entertainment anytime we want? Anything is always available 24/7, 365 leap years out a day. I don't see how late night can survive as what it is. It's kind of the same. You know, I think the same thing about Saturday Night Live sometimes as well. But late night, we live in this bizarre world where late night somehow went farther to the left than SNL. So what is the proper way forward, Christian?
Well, it may be too late, and it may be the fault of technology and how all the digital revolution is changing our lives, where late night, the format just has an expiration date. Even Jimmy Kimmel said he doesn't think it'll be there around in 10 years. He's not wrong. Having said all that, there are ways for established media platforms to survive. I mean, look at talk radio; it's still going strong. You could argue podcasting is the way to go. Obviously, we're on on YouTube and Rumble and places like that. I think you can fight the good fight. I think you can still survive. I think you can kind of roll with the punches and change with the times. I just don't think late night has done any of that. I mean, I think that the chasing away at least half of your audience was a terrible move from a pragmatic point of view. If there was a true Johnny Carson style host out there, he hits the left, he hits the right, he doesn't do it in a mean-spirited fashion. I think there'd be a draw for that, but we don't have that. Even Jimmy Fallon, who at the Tonight Show helm is less incendiary, less cartoonishly left of center, he's still left of center. So if I'm a conservative, if I'm a center-right soul, I just don't see the need to watch that. So there's that. These different platforms are losing revenue. They're shrinking. Tonight Show went from 5 shows a week to 4. And again, it's the immediacy of the web, of YouTube, where if something's truly funny, you can go shoot a video on a very small budget with no production values of consequence, and it still has a punch because the joke is there, the wit is there, and the angle is there. And I think late night just gets getting beaten to the punch again and again and again. I almost feel sorry for them if they weren't so in the tank for one party and cartoonishly so.
Well, that puts you in the same category as Tim Pool. Now, we, in terms of feeling sorry for them. So we talked about the cover-up. All right. So what then is the result of all of that? Well, the loss of credibility, even in comedy, has us here now where you've just written this article. It's fantastic. Says, has late night TV actually gotten worse in Trump 2.0? And this is what I've been paying very close attention to. And, it's hard to cover entertainment these days without also covering the politics of the day or, President Trump and what he's doing. And the reason for that, I think, Christian, is because, when the dinosaurs went extinct, we're told that it was a meteor that came down and just obliterated everything. And that's how I feel watching the dinosaur legacy going extinct media. I feel like Orange Man Bad, the meteor, crashed down and just, revealed the dominoes could no longer stand up. And so let's read what you've got here, and then we'll weigh in on it. It says, the host Jimmy Kimmel Live cried in front of a live audience the night after the November 5th presidential election. Kimmel welled up after sharing a litany of fear-mongering woes tied to Trump's electoral victory. Yes, that's the same comic who looked the other way when Team Biden silenced dissent, weaponized lawfare against his political opponents, and handed Afghanistan back to the Taliban. No tears then, and he wasn't done blubbering. In fact, you know what? Let's watch just a little bit lately of Jimmy Kimmel crying over Trump having rightly been critical of Gavin Newsom. Hear it, and remember as we watch this is a Disney man. He's paid. Listen, Disney's paying this guy's checks every single night to go out there and not get ratings, but just do rantings that are vapid and don't reach the audience that apparently Disney wants to have on board with them. Here's Jimmy.
As you know, it has been a very scary, very stressful, very strange week here in LA, where we work, where we live, where our kids go to school. We are back in our studio, which we had to evacuate on Wednesday. That's our building right there, the El Capitan. That is how close this fire was to our theater here. Many of us had to leave our homes in a hurry. Some of our coworkers lost their homes. That's Hollywood. It's
and yet he can't figure out that mismanagement, his own political views and his own political aspirations, his creeds are what are causing this. So walk us through. I mean, this is hard to watch. So I can only imagine for the average audience member out there that it's really hard to turn that on and leave it on.
Yeah, I mean, listen, some things are unavoidable. I remember after September 11th, a lot of the comedy lineups, SNL, they struggled to kind of make us laugh again. They kind of worked through the grief in a way. And I think actually they did a pretty noble service. It was giving us permission to laugh again in the face of tragedy. And so I'll cut Kimmel some slack in that regard. But, he is a satirist. He is someone who's supposed to speak truth to power. And the negligence, the incompetence that made this all much, much worse is seemingly impossible to ignore, but he does ignore it. And then he pivots to attack Trump for being critical of what happened in his state. I mean, it's really staggering. And, when you have a gaffe like Mayor Karen Bass saying, you should go to URL for help on the fires. I mean, that is something that if Helen Keller had a late night show, she would be telling that joke. I mean, it's so obvious and so critical that you do so. And yet he couldn't do that. And the other comedians couldn't do that. I will give credit. I mean, obviously Greg Gutfeld does it all day long on his show, and Bill Maher touches on it as well. But, the late night, sort of the nightly pioneers here, they're the ones who are just not doing their job. They're just not doing their job. And, we talked about the ratings, and these shows are surviving for now. They have just enough to keep the lights on. But I have to think maybe a little bit like how CNN and MSNBC have been really struggling in the last few months. I have to kind of think that this is going to happen here, because even if you're left of center, even if you hate Trump, even if you're a Democrat, do you really want to watch this? I mean, between the lack of jokes that are of consequence and completely ignoring reality, at some point, I think even this small but livable wage of an audience is going to start to dwindle away. I think maybe I'm wrong. I just don't understand how they could just sit there, especially if you live in Los Angeles and you've seen the incompetence in Technicolor. Maybe you're watching the show from a different location because you've had to move out. Are you really going to stand up for this? I mean, how long can they pull this charade? I just don't know.
Well, one of the points that I would make is that, with Kimmel, your job when you go on the late night show, I would presume, is to make people laugh. And
yeah.
There's no time when laughter is needed more than in the face of tragedy, because it's the most difficult time to find the humor, and the humor is what gets you through the hard times. Yet there he is blubbering on. And as far as I know, he didn't lose a property. He's just crying because it came close to his studio.
Yeah.
That can't feel very good if you're a person who's lost their home and you're not allowed back in the Palisades, et cetera. Now, the second thing, you opened up a new avenue of conversation that I'm really keen to go into, and that is you brought up Bill Maher and Greg Gutfeld. Now, those two are ideologically separated by a chasm, right? I mean, there's nothing similar about these guys in the way that they approach their worldview. At the same time, they are the evidence that there is a place for this genre, whatever you want to call it, whether it's late night or whether you want to call it, a comedy talk show that deals with politics, however we want to frame this. Bill Maher, Greg Gutfeld, two different sides of this, doing quite well. And so they might be the exemplars. What is it that they're doing in your estimation? What are they doing that's separating them out from what would have been considered the big three?
Well, there's two things. One, Greg Gutfeld is appealing to a center-right audience, which is completely ignored in the late night landscape. And listen, we've had about a decade of this right now, and yet no platform, no Netflix executive, no Hulu suite came up and said, you know what, we should make a right of center show, because if all these shows are left of center and the country's split down the middle, we've got a great audience we could tap. No one did that. It took Fox News, which is obviously that's their base, to make this happen. But with Bill Maher, he doesn't want to be fooled. He wants to be true to himself, and he wants to follow the funny where it leads him. And he's just an honest broker when it comes to comedy. He is left of center. He's a progressive. He doesn't deny that. And as he says many, many times, I haven't changed. My party's changed. And I think actually what he's trying to do is a public service for Democrats, thinking, hey, I'm going to tell you what you're doing wrong, because if you listen to me and you fix it, you'll actually be in a better place politically than you were yesterday. And I think there's a pragmatic approach that he's bringing here, in addition to being sort of true to himself and what he does for a living. So I think those are the two approaches we're looking at. And, Bill Maher has talked a lot about how when he goes on the road now, his audience is more mixed. It's more left of center, right of center. He's kind of broadened his base a bit. Now, I don't think he's a ratings superstar on HBO or Max, wherever you see it. But, I think his survival rate is probably better. And I think I think the better thing is that he can sleep at night. I mean, I don't know how a Stephen Colbert wakes up in the morning and looks at himself in the mirror and thinks, I'm just going to be a shill for one party. I'm going to ignore the truth. I'm going to lie to my audiences. And I think the one thing we haven't touched on yet is that so much of bias in the media is what is not covered. And I think so much of the bias in these shows is what they don't cover, the gaffes. I mean, my gosh, we saw a new Biden gaffe every other day during his presidency, and late night writers ignored it. They just couldn't look away any harder. I'm sure they hurt their neck straining just to avoid those clips. But, we saw them. And I think that there's going to have an effect at some point that we can't even trust the people that are supposed to make us laugh.
Right. And those were as easy as a kick in the crotch, right? I mean, it doesn't get easier.
That's right.
Let's take a look, though, because you brought up MSNBC and CNN and the restructuring. So MSNBC has been spun off from Comcast. They're out in the wilderness. CNN just went through massive layoffs. You had to read about 17 paragraphs into every story to find out that was what was really happening. They called it restructuring. And so I want to look, though, because you make this point inside the article that I think connects those ideas, right? So CNN and MSNBC, you could say, well, in this conversation, how are they associated with late night? They don't have late night, funny men. Mm-hmm. And the answer to that is because they're rather analogous. Like whatever CNN and MSNBC are covering, I can pretty much guarantee that's also what Kimmel and Colbert are going to be covering.
Yeah.
So you have this here. It says, take the first fake news story of 2025, which, by the way, did not work. And the way you can know it did not work is because they're already done with it. They're moving on. If it had been effective, we'd still be there.
Yeah, great point.
Elon Musk made a Yahtzee salute at Trump's inauguration gala. It's preposterous on the surface of any way you slice it. The tech mogul has fought for free speech and recently visited a place of historic nature, we'll say it that way on YouTube, alongside Jewish podcaster Ben Shapiro. They tried this in every possible way. It required a particular angle, and it required focusing in on a few frames. It didn't work. And my thought on this is that we're watching late night TV fail in the same way that we're watching cable news fail. Mm-hmm. They're the exact same bubble popping. And I think the playbook has been torn out. I think the community notes has significantly damaged and dinged their ability to do this. I think the fact that the gates have been torn down, the gatekeepers no longer have the ability to say, no, you're not allowed to push back against us. That's gone. And that's a landscape that they don't know how to handle. So let me ask this as we get ready to wrap up, okay? Let me frame that, all that convoluted stuff that I just said into a singular question we can really get around. And that is, going forward with late night TV, what's the expiration date on this? They've built up all this negativity. They've destroyed their credibility. They're not funny. How long do you put for an expiration date? Jimmy Kimmel says 10 years. I think it's far less. What say you, sir?
I'm going to guess 5. And it may survive in a certain form, in a certain manner. But I think it's going to just the next 5 years will be less and less consequential. The media is trying desperately to lift them up. You see a lot of articles regurgitating what Colbert said on a given night. There'll be late night roundups of all the jokes and all the yucks, and they always leave out Greg Gutfeld as if he doesn't exist in the same ecosystem. They don't even
ratings.
Yeah, and they don't even mention Bill Maher either, which is I'm sure on purpose. Yeah, I just think as new media outlets get stronger, as I think what really matters in our world today is authenticity, a genuine approach. And if you fake it, you just can't last forever. And I think the more that these late night hosts fake it, the less contact, the less bond they have with their audience. One of the reasons why the Joe Rogans of the world had such an impact in the election is because we listened to Andrew Schultz and Tim Dillon and Theo Von. And they're not trying to lie to us aggressively. They're just comedians. They're just kind of finding their way in the world. They're not trying to pull the wool over our eyes. And I think you can see someone like a Jimmy Kimmel who did a charity event with Joe Biden and said, ignore your eyes and ears. He didn't freeze up at the end of that fundraiser. He was perfectly fine. Move along, nothing to see. I just don't think I don't think it's a sustainable model. So I think they will be propped up for a few years, and heaven forbid that Trump is successful in any fashion, because I think the reality of that, of prices coming down, of energy going up, of better living arrangements in the country, if that's happening and they're still doing the Trump is Hitler shtick, I think 5 years might be optimistic.
Well, folks, we're optimistic that you're going to go on over to Hollywood and Toto. It is a fantastic website, but also the podcast, wonderful. Everybody out there, get out there and subscribe, bookmark it. The links are down in the video description below. Christian, it's been so long. I think it's been like a year and a half since we've had you on the show. And when I saw this article, I just said, this is the chance to remedy this. We've got to do it. And thank you for stopping by. Tell the folks, though, out there, what can they expect from the kind of content that you're creating on a regular basis?
Well, I really celebrate free speech with my work. And, that shouldn't be political, and yet it is in modern times. I talk to a lot of creators who you may not see or hear in the mainstream media. People like Tyler Fisher, who's just a funny guy, great impressions, has a really interesting way to look at the world. So I try to put a spotlight on people you're not seeing elsewhere sometimes. I try to call out attacks on free speech. There was a Jewish comedian who was canceled in Amsterdam. I think that story got zero coverage across the mainstream platforms that we watch. So I think when everyone else is zigging, I'm zagging. And I think I want to be the voice to people who just want to be funny, be truthful, be smart, and tell stories, and I wrote the book on woke Hollywood. I think woke is fading, thank goodness, but there are so many cultural wars to fight right now. And at the end of the day, if a movie's good, I'm going to celebrate it. I don't care whether it's left, right, or in the center. I think great content speaks for itself and should be celebrated and raised up. So I don't want to be doctrinaire in what I do. I am right of center. I'm transparently so, but there's more to life than that.
Well, folks, that's the sort of mission that I think we can all get behind. Get over there and subscribe today, and you'll get underway with understanding entertainment in ways that the mainstream would never allow otherwise. Folks, you can also be the gigawatts behind this video. Click that like button, share, subscribe, click it, stick it to the algorithms. It is the notification bell. Drop a comment down below. Let us know your thoughts and tell us what do you think about late night TV and how long it might last. Give us your predictions. 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years or more. We'd love to hear what you have to say as we get ready to head out the door. And folks, until the next time that we have the joy of spending time with you and being invited into your day, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.
My brain is fried and I can't think of things to do to people, like Jonas or culture. I mean, leaving them in this place of what's next is ideal and all, but other than going to an extreme that would rip them limb from limb or something, I got nothing. Jose, what do you think?
My name's Jose. We could reenact the chess scene with that Greg from Culture Casino Royale.
What? That doesn't even make sense.
Okay, we could reattempt to cook Jonas like a big fish on the island of the Clone Wars. Or is that too redundant?
Why don't you try talking slower and louder? You're like a woman. Wait. Oh, I don't know. What if we do a play on words? We could gamble with Culture Casino and play something like Russian roulette, which I'm sure you could identify with. You foreigners all sound and look the same. And Jonas, well, he's an investigative reporter. So what if we flip the script and ask him some probing questions?
Oh.